Hey, gang, fellow crime fighters, Morgan Wright, CEO, founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, openunsolved.org. We've got a lot of neat things that are going to happen. Wanted to give you an update on two things. Number one, not going to disclose the name yet, not until we work some things out, but this person is a great friend. He has been victimized by crime. He refuses to be called a victim. When you hear his story and what he was involved in, it's just going to be impressive. He is a legendary guy, a pirate. Arg. It'll become clear. This dude has done well for himself, and he could sit around on his ass. I mean, when I say he's done well, he's done well. He could sit around on his ass, sit on the beach, drinking Mai Tais, smoking cigars, whatever he might do. He chooses not to. This man has stayed in the fight. Good friend of his was the victim, and I know about this story because he called me the morning it happened, and I worked with him initially to get going, and then this guy became a force of nature all on his own. So he has agreed to become the first donor to the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. We'll disclose things if and when it's the right time, but he's also agreed to become a board member. And one of the things we want to focus on, and I'm going to talk to you too about the Cleveland kidnappings. There is a lesson and a story and an opportunity that was missed in those cases that I'll talk to you about. But I want to talk about this. He refuses to be called a victim. He says, and we talked about this. We had a long call last night. He says, "I don't want to be a victim." I mean, that's like you're putting something on me. Instead, what we said is, look, there are people who have been victimized by crime, but they refuse to become victims. And so he's going to focus on the board role as being something who advocates for people who've been victimized by crime. We're not going to buy into this victim stuff anymore. We're going to give people the tools, the means, the ability to take control of their situation, to do like he did, and ensures that his friend, and when I say savagely murdered, I mean savagely murdered. As a detective, I worked lots of cases. This one, he was kidnapped from his own home about 2 a.m, handcuffed, stabbed repeatedly at his home, taken out to a site where he had another business interest. And when he refused to apparently give them what they wanted, he was shot 8 or 9 times in the head. Obviously dead, left out there. And one of the things I told my friend was, I said, because I reviewed some of the video footage and I helped the sheriff's office with some ad tech stuff, tracking of phones. I said, whoever this is, your friend knew the victim. They knew who it was. And so this was 1,982 days, I think it says, from the time the event happened, the murder happened, until the conviction happened. And he says great things about the sheriff, the district attorney out where he's at. So we'll get into more of that later. But just know things are starting to break. Had a good meeting today with Ryan Reesley. Ryan is the CTO and he's a partner at Whitfleet. There are developers behind the scene, and they work with a lot of great companies like Team Rubicon USA. If you guys haven't checked that out, check out Team Rubicon. So we're talking about how we really take this and build this. So some good things there. But what I wanted to talk to you today. So for those of you who might know, I originally designed something and built something with a couple friends. It was called Connected to the Case. And it was using Facebook to make connections. And our first fugitive case we did for the sheriff's office here. Let's put it this way. We found the guy in 36 hours. They'd been looking for him for 6 months. Found him 36 hours, 3 states away, made the news, all sorts of good stuff. But I wanted to talk to you today about the Cleveland kidnappings because I want to show you, this is why I'm so insistent on using locations as one of the layers that we use to be able to connect people to cases. So here's what it is. Let me pull this up for you here. This is actually a little write-up I did of the case. If you guys don't remember, back in 2002, starting in 2002, 3 girls were kidnapped. Michelle Knight was the first one, Amanda Berry was the second, and Gina DeJesus was the third. They were kidnapped in Cleveland, Ohio, and they just disappeared. Nobody had an idea where they were. Nobody knew anything about that. But here's the thing, though. They all disappeared within 3 to 4 blocks of each other. So I said, well, let's first of all, let's plot this out. Let's map this out. Take a look at this. Gina DeJesus, Amanda Berry, Michelle Knight, right? All right here. All things right there. I don't know if this will show up here. Yeah, probably will show up there. Yeah. So you can see that here, 3 locations, right? Why was that important? Well, it's important for a couple reasons that I'll talk to you about here in just a minute. It was important because Cleveland police department at that time created a Facebook page, and I went through, and I'm not knocking Cleveland. I'm just saying these are lessons learned, opportunities missed. Not once did they put this case on their Facebook page. Not once did they target the neighborhood where this happened. Why should they have done this? I'm about to show you why, right? So at the time of her disappearance, Michelle was an adult. So I mean, I get into some things here where I talk about all three victims disappeared within 3 or 4 blocks of each other. Michelle was an adult, although she was entered into a missing persons database. She was removed 15 months later after repeated attempts to contact her mother, verify her status as missing, still failed. She fell through the cracks. She didn't have to. And I'll make this, if you guys want to read this PDF, I'll post it as well to this. But after the kidnapping of Gina DeJesus, which if you like we were shown here on our timeline here, Gina was the third one. They released a sketch of a man, a Hispanic man, in connection with her disappearance. A description of the suspect was given, indicated he was seen near Wilbert Wright Middle School before Gina vanished, and he was asking for her. So what does that say? It says no. So I want you to take a look at this, though. This is the sketch. This is the sketch of the person who the witness said this is what they did. So now on July 9th, this is later, Ashley Summers went missing from her home. Very close area. So she's up here in this area. If you can see it, let me click on this right here. She went missing up in this area over here. So we had the other 3 kidnappings over here. She went missing in this area up here. Could it have been tied together? I don't know. We could see, we could take a look, but that was definitely in a location. So again, they didn't join Facebook till January 2012. I went through every single posting that Cleveland had put on that case to look to say, did they do anything with it? So here's what I did. The other thing I did too is I went through and I obviously plotted out, but then I used a radius. So you can see how closely they were kidnapped within each other, right? So, but here's the thing. On May 26th, or May 6th, 2013, this is basically 10 years later, Michelle, Amanda, and Gina, they were freed. What happened was the suspect, guy named Ariel Castro, he was away from the house, but he had them chained together. If you guys remember this case, you can go look it up. You can take a look at it. It was on America's Most Wanted. It was on a lot of things, but they never made the connection. She was able to free herself, run out into the street. And if you listen to the 911 call, it is just heart-wrenching. I tell you what, I don't normally criticize law enforcement, but the dispatcher on this case did a very poor job. Very poor job. And the guy, I'm sure he probably got counseling or reprimand for it, but this was such an important case, and you could hear, I should say, the fear in her voice. But let's get into the real nuts and bolts of this, right? So on May 6th, they were freed. The prime suspect was identified as Ariel Castro of 2207 Seymour Avenue. Guess what? His home, if you take a look at this picture here, his home was 3 miles from the center point of where all 3 victims were kidnapped. Now think about that. Why do I hammer so hard on locations being so important on what we do with the National Center, with Open Unsolved, with Holmes? It's because of this, because the one thing everything has in common, the girls all disappeared from somewhere. And as we found out, they were all being held somewhere. We didn't know where they were being held, but we knew where they were taken from, right? Here's why the ability to put a pin in a map, draw a radius around it, and say, hey, is anybody connected to this, right? So you draw a 5-mile radius around that, and you say, oh, by the way, here's the picture we have of the person that could be a suspect in this case. Now take a look at this. This is the composite sketch that was done, and this is the actual photograph of Ariel Castro. Now take a look at that. Now you tell me, you live in that neighborhood, you get a ping because you say, hey, I put my address in and you're on Seymour where this dude lived, and you get a ping like that, and tell me that you don't at least go, that kind of looks like the guy next door. By the way, you know what's weird about the guy next door? All of the shades are drawn. You can't see out. He comes and he goes, right? And what is he bringing? He's bringing to McDonald's. He's bringing junk food. He's got them chained up. He's sexually assaulted them. One of the girls gave birth while she was there. One of them had lost her baby while was there because he punched her in the stomach. This guy was just a literal piece of crap. I'll tell you about his demise a little bit later. But take a look at that sketch. Now, you tell me, you're living in that neighborhood. You get a ping that says, hey, you may be connected to this case because these girls went missing. You're within a 5-mile radius of where they're looking for it. Boom. Do you know this guy? And I'm telling you, not only that, but when we scroll down a little bit more and we look at, there's this booking photo. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here going, how Is it perfect? No. But I will tell you, as a detective who worked a lot of cases, who had done a lot of the old, like we said, Smith and Wesson, they used to have these things called identikits, but saying sketch artists and do stuff. If I'd had something that good right there, I'd consider that a win. That's about an 85%. Sometimes you're lucky if it's 50%. Sometimes what it's designed to do is exclude everything else so that you say, well, it can't be that because they don't even look close to that. It's not a 6'10" dude with a green nose. But this right here, look at this. Look at the Van Dyke, the goatee, right? Look at the eyes. Look at the features. Look at this picture up here, right? I'm telling you, this is why putting a pin in a map and saying, hey, these are all the things around it. So we were dealing within 3 blocks of each other within a 20-month period. A lot of people believe that Amanda and Gina were related, right? But what did they never do? They never put the cases on Facebook, at least at a minimum, to share with the people out there. So could it have made a difference? Well, like I said, we know that Castro lived 3.3 miles. He lived 3.3 miles from the kidnappings of all the girls and 2.7 miles from Ashley, the other one we talked about, which I don't know that they were able to ever tie that in, right? So, but here's the thing, though. On June 12th, 2008, and this is 6-7 years after they'd been kidnapped, or 4 to 5 years. They came in contact with Castro during a traffic stop. If he'd been arrested, could it be a link to the sketch? Well, we don't know. But I mean, there's lots of, but this is like DNA, right? You put something into that system, you wait to see if there's a match. Well, in this case, the locations, there were matches at least to a radius of the location. So, like I said, I'll give you guys this stuff. And that's what we said. Had we done this, this is the original connected to the case platform, right? New connection. Got it. You have 11 connections to this case. You have 2 connections to this case, right? Our strategy would have been enter all the cases separately. And then what you do is you do a short URL, you share them so that when somebody looks at the case on your Facebook page, they can actually click on the case to see if they're connected to it now. The only problem, what happens with law enforcement is they'll put a case on a Facebook page, but then they leave it there. There's nothing to do, right? There's nothing that connects to anything else out there. This needs to drive people back to homes. It needs to drive people back to a central system to when they look at it, the first question is, are you connected to this case? Well, you have an account. You'll find out pretty quick if you're connected. If you don't have an account, you create one, you put in your locations, and then you find out very quickly if you have a connection to this case. So the whole thing we would have done is just put this in there and just continue to make these connections. So as I said, if you guys want to read that PDF, I'll post it in the Facebook page when I do this. But that's the whole reason that I hammer home and I work with the other folks. Location is one of the very first things we have to be able to make a connection on, right? Because those locations are specific. They can be geolocated, whereas from a demographic standpoint, or a relation standpoint, well, they might be a phlebotomist, they might be a yoga teacher, they might be a car salesman. Those things don't tie them to a specific area. They talk about a skill and maybe they're working at a car dealer, but you don't know which one. But what I do know is that if you were kidnapped from a certain location, then I can put that pin in the map and I can draw a radius around that. If I know that your car was recovered in another location, I can put a pin in the map, draw a radius around that. And anybody who has a location within that radius get connected. You're going to get pinged and you're going to say, you might be connected to this case because where the car was found and where you used to live are both in that same area, both within that radius, right? So that's why on the Cleveland kidnappings and stuff, when I looked at this, I said, man, missed opportunity here. And so we don't want that to happen again. So just wanted to just give you guys an update. Going to continue to put stuff out there. We've got some training coming up, guys. So again, I will tell you, let me just take a quick thing. Allergies. Anybody else got allergies? Plus I talk too much. I've been told. September 4th, we plan on having this system go live. But remember our strategy, content first, users second. So, and then the other exciting thing, had a meeting with the leadership of the Chesterfield County Police Department yesterday. We're working on, with our buddy Johnny Capicelli, who they call Johnny Cappuccino. I said, no, Johnny Capicelli. We're going to use him. The goal is to use him, and we've proposed to use him as our case coordinator for Chesterfield County Police Department. The exciting thing, though, if you're down in the Chesterfield, Richmond area, we're actually working on our first training. We're going to get this thing launched off the ground. We're going to start doing it regionally, but we're going to do something that's different. In the morning, we're going to start with law enforcement. We're going to train law enforcement in the morning for a couple hours, take a little break, and then bring citizens in and get everybody together and say, this is the system. This is what law enforcement can do. You citizens, this is what you can do. And by the way, if you want to volunteer and help us, do you want to help make your community safer? Do you want to help find fugitives? Do you want to help solve cold cases? Do you want to help? By the way, 75% of all rapes, sexual assaults go without an arrest. Did you guys know that? Is that an acceptable number? Did you know that back in the 1960s, the clearance rates on homicides were nearly 90%? Today, they're 58%. That goes back to my buddy Christopher Lockhead. He put a post out on that, taking the stats we had talked about many times before, right? Think about all of these. There are over 250,000 unsolved homicides right now. We've got to do something about that, right? You may not solve the case you're interested in, but you may end up solving a case somewhere in 2 states away because you know something that happened there 10 years ago. But nobody has ever brought you the information so that you can connect the dots. The gap is what they know and what you know. Nobody's ever connected it together. That's what home does. It connects everybody together so that what is knowledge of one becomes knowledge of all. So that's kind of the update. I'll throw the Cleveland kidnapping PDF in there. Look, it was just a quick write-up I did here, years ago with connected to the case. But the same underlying fundamental principles are the same. We had places where things happened. We had people connected to those locations. We need to be able to do a radius around those and see the connections that happen, right? And for you to get that notification so that you may have been the person to identify Ariel Castro. And by the way, I told you he met his demise. The little, I can say this son of a bitch, the POS, hung himself in his jail cell, took the coward's way out, saved the taxpayers a lot of money. Room temperature is a good look for somebody like him who kidnapped 3 girls, got them pregnant, beat them, caused one of them to lose a baby because he beat her, kept them like animals for 10 years, chained up in a home for 10 years. Their parents suffered for 10 years, right? Families suffered for 10 years. So you know what? This is what this system is designed to do. So anyway, stay tuned. Remember, we will be launching some stuff. Our go live date right now is targeted for September 4th for case entry. So we'll go live. We're going to start bringing on agencies in the Commonwealth. We've got a call with the Attorney General's Office of Virginia tomorrow, looking at partnering with them. We've got some partnerships getting ready with WTVR down there in Richmond for you folks down there. So we're going to start in Virginia, but I got a great idea of when I was talking to, I told you, Ryan recently from Whipfley. We were talking about Team Rubicon. We're going to start looking for volunteers in each. So as we roll out, we want to identify what is a cadre, what is a cohort of volunteers in a state, in Kansas, where I'm from, right? State Patrol, Kansas State Patrol. Go Kansas, go Wildcats, go Irish this year. All right, so we can start doing that. We can start launching in these areas. We can find people who are invested in their community, retirees from law enforcement, crime analysts, citizens who want to get involved, right? So we're going to really work on this. We're going to blow this up and make something out of it. And you guys have been helpful and been a part of it. So stay tuned, crime fighters. September 4th is our target date to go live. We're going to start doing case entries right after that. We're going to do that through September and October, getting into November. But hopefully by November, we're going to launch then, bringing the citizens in, getting citizens on board. And by that time, when I was just, if we're good, we could have 2,000 to 3,000 cases in here easily, something to start with, right? So stay tuned, crime fighters. September 4th, the big date coming up, and I'll have more information to you guys later. I'll post the Cleveland kidnapping PDF into the chat on Facebook and on Twitter as well. And we'll talk to you guys later. Everybody stay safe.